All right, and welcome everybody in, finally, after a slight delay, to the third episode of Hot Tag, presented by PWP Nation, streaming live on PWP Nation as we speak, a little later than normal, but that's okay. Also streaming live on YouTube via our YouTube channel. However, the easiest and quickest way to find us every week is going to be to just go to pwpnation.com and watch us right from there. However, if you came in for 9 o'clock and couldn't wait through me and Caden's technical difficulties and have to find us during the week, where every episode is there on the YouTube channel this week as well as the past weeks. Caden, how you doing? Now that I can hear you, how's things going? How's it been?
Hey, it's going good. Going good. Just looking forward to Sunday. I say that at the moment, but it's been a solid week of wrestling. I think Monday wasn't so hot, but I think we can all agree Tuesday was pretty nice. And as for NXT, nothing really big happened, so I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to this show today.
There we go. We're 30 seconds in, and Caden just gave away which show he thought was better for the week. But there's analysis. I promise. There's analysis to come. So obviously, yes. I think it's. Yes. I'm excited for this week because this is the first week in 3 weeks that we've got, I think, happenings throughout the week in 3 promotions. We get out of WWE for a bit. We've got 3 promotions that we've got valid, big-time news coming out of all 3. But I do think, at least storyline-wise, the biggest thing that happened this week happened at the end of SmackDown last night.
Yes.
I think everybody assumed or expected that we were going to get here with Randy Orton finally leaving the Wyatt family, turning his back on Bray Wyatt. I don't know that we expected the production value or that we expected it to go the way that it did, but obviously a huge ending to SmackDown, really a rare throwback to a little bit of the Attitude Era that I thought. Now, I'm not comparing it necessarily to segments of the Attitude Era, but just that feel of, something outside of the arena that was produced, and you could tell at least there was some effort into that. There was some thought behind that, and they really tried to knock that out of the park. I saw a little bit of your reaction, not to spoil Caden's upcoming, but I know your Facebook profile picture is currently Randy Orton standing in front of a burning down house. So I have a feeling I know what some of your reaction is, but how after seeing the way that they did this, after expecting it for as many weeks as we did, how are you feeling about the events on Tuesday and the whole angle to this point?
You're right. I don't think any of us expected it to go that way. I think we just expected a simple turn, maybe, just attacking Bray, something like that, a confrontation of some sorts. But they did something different, and I think we got to give them credit for doing that. I wasn't expecting all that to happen, but I loved it, as you know. I thought it was a tremendous moment. I think both Randy and Bray did a tremendous job at playing their roles. Bray, especially, the emotion he showed. Randy with the determination. And of course, just burning down the compound that has been a symbol of Bray Wyatt, and not to mention with Sister Abigail's remains inside. Those are 2 huge symbols of Bray Wyatt in his career. And now that Randy Orton has taken those away from him, it's going to be very interesting to see how these next 4 or 5 weeks plays out. But overall, I loved everything about it. The only issue I could probably think about is the timing of the whole situation, due to the fact that we just had AJ Styles come out of the match with Luke Harper as the quote-unquote #1 contender. So now we have that question to be answered. But overall, I thought it was a perfectly executed scenario. So what about you? What do you think about that?
Well, I could nitpick. I don't want to knock it. I'm happy that they. Oh, Google's not doing this for me. Okay, duly noted. I'm happy that it was something more than at the end of a match, Bray turns into an RKO. I'm happy that they did something different, that they went out of the box. And I enjoyed the segment. It drew me into it. I give both guys credit. I think that's hard to do. I'm obviously assuming that was, that Randy there was obviously taped beforehand, and that's always a difficult thing. I think a lot of credit there goes to Bray and his ability to react to it. Oh, remind me. There we go. Centered up and actually on camera now. I remember the only thing I said during the segment was I was wondering a bit, and I don't know how much it would have overtaken from Randy, at least towards the end, if we could have gotten some of Bray pleading and reaction into a microphone. Because I think you had to know with that segment, the way they did it, and the fact that it was kind of out there, and it was out of the norm, and it was more, the fans were going to respond positively just because it was a cool moment. It was something nobody saw coming. And let's face it, anytime, especially in a wrestling setting, anytime anybody sets anything on fire, people tend to cheer. As slightly demented as that is, fire equals popular a lot of times in wrestling because you just don't get it very often. But I really think that the goal will come out of that angle, and I really think you're going to see it in the way that WWE positions it and sells it going into the next week. I really think that the idea is for Bray to be the face in this whole situation. As much as you had people chanting for Randy Orton at the end of that segment, I don't think that's the direction that they want to go with that. I think part of that is they hoped and expected us to accept a couple of things. We've always seen that room with Bray, but until last night, was anybody really, the only time we've heard of the Wyatt compound was after we heard about the Hardy compound and that little knockoff angle with the New Day that I think everybody kind of just universally hated.
Right.
So, and Sister Abigail, that's always been a big thing, but it's hard to put that into tangible, to make that a thing, because it's never been anything more than something that Bray said. So you did have to go out onto a little bit of a limb there, but I think that's acceptable because you always are going to have that with Bray, just as you always had it for a long time with The Undertaker, those supernatural characters. You're going to have to accept a little bit if you really want to make their stuff work. But I think Bray has to be the face here. But
it's excuse me, it's intriguing because I completely agree he should be the babyface here, but you can argue both sides. I mean, I believe it was Ford on Facebook who brought up the point that apparently Bray killed Sister Abigail, buried her, and that is reason to be
I don't know if they. I think he's jumping. You don't know that he killed her.
Yeah.
We're going down that road. Yeah, it's a little unorthodox for a loved one to be buried under a building. I'll give you that.
But Bray should be the babyface because Randy did burn down his compound and he did destroy the remains of his sister that he always talks about and cares for, as we have seen. But and that is some real heel stuff right there from Randy Orton. And it's also the fact that, like I mentioned before, the emotion Bray Wyatt showed and the compassion that he showed while that was happening is all justified for a babyface run. So I think when you look at this, Bray Wyatt will undoubtedly be the face in this situation, and I have no problem with that because I really want to see Bray as the babyface right now.
Yeah, there's been rumors for years that they wanted to get, ever since the Fireflies thing became a thing, that they wanted to do that. It's like you said, it's the first time you've seen anything affect Bray.
Right.
At all. And if you really look at it, and this really just kind of came to me as I'm listening to you, and now that, obviously they're now going to you'd expect they're going to have a match at WrestleMania. But for the most, the Randy as a member of the Wyatt family story is over. Now go back and look at that story and compare it to what everybody said was a similar story with Bray when Daniel Bryan joined the Wyatt family.
Right.
Daniel Bryan joined the family after weeks of beatdowns and things, and that's probably the only comparison that links up with Randy. Randy willingly joins. Bryan maybe not so willingly. They played that off as almost him being brainwashed and being mesmerized to be into it. And then Bryan suffers week after week of them losing matches and him getting berated, him getting beaten down and Sister Abigail week after week after week until he finally pushes Bray off and fights back. You've gotten none of that with Randy since he joined.
Right.
You haven't gotten anything where, if anything, the story was, Randy almost being the teacher's pet, which is why Harper was then eventually ostracized. Bray hasn't mistreated Randy in any way, shape, or form. And to then have Randy turn, I mean, everybody expected Randy to turn, but everybody expected Randy to turn because it's Randy. And if you've been watching wrestling for as long as both of us and most of the people that you see on the internet have, you just kind of understood that only had a certain shelf life. Him being in the Wyatt family was only going to last for so long. But within the story, Bray had done nothing other than win the title to make Randy an adversary. And in any other story, wrestling-wise, if you have a faction and one member gains a title and another member of that faction suddenly turns, it's out of jealousy and they envy and they want to be the champion. That person's always the heel. Randy has to be the villain here.
Yeah,
it's just, and I will say this: WWE is very good at this, and I expect to see this when we go into SmackDown. Is that they will take that situation, which was Randy Orton doing something out of the box and cool and creative and being cheered at the end of that show, and they will put together a video package that will paint him in the worst possible light, and the commentators and everybody will frame that, and I'm sure Bray will come out and give a hell of an interview, a hell of a promo on Tuesday, and everybody will go along for the ride, and then Bray will be there. But I think that they've got to come out of there with that, and that was the only thing. And it would have been the only thing that I thought Tuesday that might have helped them if they wanted to step in that direction, just would have been, getting some of that. You at home got it, but nobody in the audience really got that Bray reaction. Luckily, like I say, I think they'll take care of that going into the next week's show. But I mean, people clamor for that kind of stuff every week. I think they can't do it every week, but I'm not going to complain about them pulling something like that out of there and doing as much as they could to make it make sense. And like I said, not having it just be Bray celebrates, turns around, and gets RKO'd, and that's that. Now we're on to WrestleMania. But you mentioned the timing. I think the timing made sense, but only because I know how WWE and wrestling works. And as soon as you think and the way SmackDown's worked for months, as soon as you think you know what's going on, it's that old famous Roddy Piper quote. As soon as you think you've got the answers, I change the questions. As soon as we think we knew what the WrestleMania main event's going to be, and we think that we know that AJ Styles is going to be there, now I don't think AJ Styles is going to be there.
No.
You had what I thought was a great match between AJ and Luke. I think finally you really are starting to they're starting to get Harper legitimized into a spot where he's not going to be fighting AJ Styles and John Cena every week, but I'm starting to feel confident where this is not a situation that when this ends and then we start moving towards what I think will be Bray and Orton at Mania and AJ, and I don't even want to say it at Mania, but we all, I think, know where that's going.
Right.
That Harper all of a sudden is fighting, Kurt Hawkins next week. I think we're past that. I think Harper's finally, years overdue, but it's finally established, and maybe now can get a little bit of just his own character development and things moving. But I think it helped him tremendously. I think it helped him more than the match at Randy Orton at whatever the last Raw pay-per-view is that I can't remember. Elimination Chamber? No, SmackDown. Elimination Chamber.
There you go.
I think they set it up. Watching the match on Tuesday, and I'll admit I walked in the curse of working retail. Walked in right about the middle of that match and really got settled in around the time that AJ had pinned Luke, and they were about, Shane was coming out to reverse the decision.
Right.
And I said to my fiance at the time, oh, okay, so now Luke's going to win, and AJ, and the rumored match with AJ and Shane is set up. Now, you didn't know what was coming at the end of the night, and it makes it look brilliant that they were willing to nuance it enough that they still swerved you within the AJ and Harper match with reversing or restarting the match. Every wrestling fan is programmed that they know how that goes. Harper wins and AJ blames Shane. Well, instead, AJ still wins. Shane still finds a way to be involved. And now you tease, we would expect in the next week or so that now that the Royal Rumble winner is exercising his right, that the last 2 weeks, for lack of a better term, don't really matter. And that's where AJ's anger, I would imagine, would come in. What do you think of that whole decision? What were you thinking when the match ended, knowing that there was a Bray Wyatt segment to come up? And, how are you feeling? Do you think this... A lot of people are angry about where we think AJ Styles is going. What do you think about how this is all going to affect the main event and each individual player's spot at WrestleMania?
Well, I'm just going to say this first of all. Once that match ended, I was kind of upset because that kind of just means I'm not getting the triple threat I've been vouching for the past 2 weeks.
It would have been a great way to start off your hot tag run, which will hopefully be a nice long run, would have been to nail that 2 weeks before it was hit. But I will say, by the time that they apparently killed it, you had a lot more people on board with you than you did when you said it. So
right. But as for the match in general, once AJ Styles won, I was surprised. I was a little confused, but I knew going into the segment with Bray, I knew in my head something big was going to happen. And it did. And as for... It kind of made up for the fact that AJ won. I'm not upset AJ won, but it's kind of confusing when you look at it. But now we're going to get we are going to get AJ versus Shane. All right, that match is going to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't form the words. I'm sure it'll be great, but I couldn't form the words.
Right. I'm not going to knock on that match. I'm not gonna go near it right now, but we will get it. But now the question is, how are they going to take AJ out of this title picture now? Because he technically is the number one contender. Technically, on Talking Smack, Daniel Bryan said we don't know if we have a number one contender. But I'm going to ask you this because I really don't know. How should they take AJ out of that spot to set up Shane v. AJ?
I don't think there's going to be any horribly creative or super interesting way to do it. I think it's probably going to be something along the lines, like I mentioned, where they're going to point to some ancient, never before exercised or really even written down clause where the Royal Rumble winner gets priority. And until Mania occurs, they always have priority because they put themselves in uncharted territory. We talked about, you'd never had a situation before where a Royal Rumble winner just refused to take his match. So they were kind of in uncharted waters the whole way there. I expect there to be some sort of backstage interaction or in the ring interaction between AJ and Shane, where Shane lays down that bad news to AJ. You're now out. We'll find something else for you at WrestleMania. And obviously AJ will take umbrage with that. My interesting part with this, and I'm wondering, does this give you the shot? We've been seeing a lot of GM on commissioner angst on Raw. Is there any part that thinks, because they've teased it, but it's never gotten there, do we start to see a little bit of Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon issue here? With Shane instigating himself back, eventually we expect into the ring. And I wouldn't be shocked if you saw because there's obviously a lot of parallels to a guy like Daniel Bryan and a guy like AJ Styles. For everything AJ Styles has done and him being positioned as a villain, last few months he really hasn't done much that would be considered villainous other than wrestle a lot of guys that a lot of people cheer for. So it's an easy transition to turn him into a good guy. I don't think they'll do that versus Shane, but do you think I think that's an interesting storyline they could go down, where all of a sudden you start to get a little bit of conflict between Bryan and Shane, because when Shane takes him out of that match, it wouldn't surprise me to get a Talking Smack promo or something out of Daniel Bryan where they at least allude to the idea that they're not on the same page there.
That's I never really thought about that. It'd be intriguing, and I think if you want to go that route, if executed properly, then they could absolutely nail it. If you want to give some tension with Shane and Daniel, because as you mentioned, we see it all the time on Raw with Foley and Stephanie, and it's not, for me, it's annoying. It's not great. It's just Stephanie putting down Foley week in and week out. But if you want to do it with Daniel and Shane, and you have good reason to, with Shane wanting to get back in the ring against one of SmackDown's top guys, if you want to do that, be my guest. Just do it in a way that will make the fans actually care.
Right. And that's just a passing thought. I was just curious what you thought on that. And another passing thought, just as you said it, with the Stephanie and Mick thing, until they prove otherwise, and people were trying to allude towards some sort of WrestleMania match for Mick. Mick's not wrestling. I take Mick at 100% honesty. I actually think he probably shouldn't have put it out there, but I think he's just too honest a guy. I really just think that he's realizing until he's put it out there on social media and in different interviews that his health is just really an issue with the travel right now. And I think they might have even felt that, they were laying seeds for conflict there. But there's been the talk on social media about him getting surgery and things. My expectation, my thought is they might have just needed to accelerate that schedule, where they've got an opportunity. I know there's a name floated out there that may replace him. We'll talk about that in another day. But I think Mick's probably just facing the idea that right now he probably has to get off the road. And the fastest way to take care of that is just to have Stephanie fall back into that role that she's always in. The other thing, you said you didn't want to touch on it. I want you to touch on it because last week we talked about this. I'm throwing this at him. Caden didn't know I was coming at him with this, and I just put this together. So we'll see if we get what kind of reaction we get from Caden here. Last week we talked about a match that was not even on paper at that point. They put it together now, but we debated whether or not Miz and Maurice versus John Cena and Nikki Bella was a good idea, and we went through that topic. So I think it's totally within bounds to at least give some opinion on AJ and Shane and what you think of, since it does appear that it would be a shock to me if they didn't go that route. So. So many people want to talk disrespect for Miz, and now everybody's all rosy-cheeked and smiles after the way they presented that on SmackDown, because the Miz is even now so underrated. But I would only expect that the perceived disrespect to AJ has got to be even more, right? We've got to feel that AJ's being just completely screwed at WrestleMania now, right?
Okay. First of all, let me just talk. All right. Last week, I knocked on the Miz and Cena, Maurice and Bella match. I'm just gonna go ahead and say, after last night, I'm looking forward to the match. I think both Cena and Miz killed it. Maurice and Bella, that's an intriguing matchup. So I'm just after last week of me not wanting the match, I'm gonna eat my words here and say I'm actually looking forward to it now, because I can already tell the build-up is going to be tremendous. Now, as for AJ versus Shane,
hold up. And I'm gonna switch the camera even for this, which I told you last week.
All right. Anyway, as for AJ versus Shane, I don't, not that I know of, have I given my opinion on the match itself.
No, that's not what I'm insinuating. I'm not saying that I've caught anything from you or anything like that. I'm just
No, yeah.
That's just me playing my Stephen A. Smith role and assuming
right
that if we were as angry as we were for the Miz, we've got to be more angry for AJ Styles.
You know, the thing is, you know, I'm not. After last night, I'm not angry for the Miz. My opinion changed there, but as with AJ and Shane, I haven't put any thought into the match whatsoever. But after we saw the seeds being planted last night, and after thinking about the match, and you're right, everyone is showing hatred for this match because they feel like AJ deserves a better match and spot on the card. And in some cases that might be true, but I don't think AJ is being disrespected here. I don't think he is. I mean, would I love him to be in a bigger match with the championship? Absolutely. I think we both would. But when you look at the potential of Shane versus AJ, of course, Shane isn't what he used to be. His match with Undertaker last year wasn't that great. But, this is AJ Styles. AJ Styles is one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. AJ Styles doesn't care about whether or not he feels disrespected. AJ Styles just wants to put on a great match. And that's what I think we will get. I do believe AJ versus Shane will be a good match. I think people are going to really look at it and be like, wow, that was good. And in answer to your question, just to sum it up, I don't think AJ is being disrespected here. And I think we should, after what I said about Miz and Cena last week, I think I'm just going to turn the tables here and say, let's just give this a shot and take it easy.
I hope everybody on Twitter and social media heard the last words that came out of your mouth, because that's like weekly advice to them every week is just like, calm down. But I will say, and we'll get into this obviously as we move towards WrestleMania, so I don't want to spend a ton of time left on it, but I will say, obviously, I think AJ is a better opponent for Shane than Taker was. I think they will have a better match. I think the match will be entertaining and things. But I will say this, even as I alluded to the idea that you shouldn't be angry about it, I will say when we talked about Miz and Cena's match at Mania, there's a lot of things, a lot of checks that I gave that match in the positive column that I can't give this one. The Total Divas impact that so many bashes, the idea that it's going to be probably the second most advertised and hyped and promoted match on the card outside, mainstream wise. AJ and Shane won't get any of that. AJ and Shane is still going to be ultimately graded on what they do in the ropes, inside the square circle. So they're at a disadvantage there. So AJ is at a bigger disadvantage, I think, than either Cena or Miz was going to be in. And I think there's a little bit more cause for concern heading into this. But the fact is, Shane's proven more times than I can count in my lifetime that he's going to give 120% of everything he can do to perform at the highest level, and to perform at a level, he's going to make sure that if anybody says a bad word about the match, it's not because of him. And he's in there with a guy that would take a whole lot to go wrong for us to say that a match is bad because of him. So they should be fine. It's a matter of, I think the anger is you've got other potential matchups that seem like all-world match of the decade type scenarios, and people got excited about them because AJ doesn't have a current feud or a current story, so it allows people to believe they might just throw a dream match together.
Right.
Shinsuke, Finn Balor, something of that nature. WWE doesn't tend to do that. WWE tends to say if we're going to put a match on, we're going to build some sort of a story to it. And I don't think any of those other scenarios are quite ripe yet for them to bring them up. So I think it'll be worthwhile. I mean, like I said, I think when we're sitting and watching WrestleMania, I think everybody will be really happy with it. I do kind of understand some of the griping beforehand, and we'll get into all of that more when we get past Fastlane and head towards Mania. So I think I probably know where we're both heading, but we might as well touch on last week. Both of us said Raw was the show of the week because both of us were turned off quite a bit by the ending of the number one contenders battle royal, and it wasn't. We gave props to Alexa Bliss and Becky Lynch for making the best of a bad situation with the women's title there, but there wasn't a lot else on SmackDown.
Right.
This week, heading into this week, so Raw's up 1 point. I have a feeling I know where you're going, but I'll ask anyway. Raw or SmackDown? Which show won the week?
Yeah, it's SmackDown, convincingly. And here's why. Because last week, I gave it to Raw because of the ending on SmackDown. And last week, both shows had their moments, but it wasn't a convincing week. It wasn't a convincing win for Raw. But as for this week, I just couldn't find myself to enjoy Raw. I don't know. It just didn't feel like a strong go home show. But as for SmackDown, there's no explaining why I thought it was the better show from start to finish. I loved everything about it, from John and The Miz to Randy and Bray. It was to AJ versus Luke Harper. It was a strong show, and I think it showed a lot of story progression, and that's what we need right now on this road to Mania. So for that reason, SmackDown's getting the win.
Yeah, I would say ultimately we both, neither one of us was particularly thrilled with either show last week.
Right.
And I think, and this is oversimplifying, this isn't, we hope, necessarily the way WWE works behind the scenes, but one show learned from last week and one didn't.
Right.
Raw was still all over the place.
Right.
And ultimately, I really only give them a positive or a green check mark on one segment, and it's the end segment with Braun and Roman.
Yep.
It wasn't even as strong of a segment as the week before. Braun at the end of the show before. SmackDown, clear winner. And we've already talked so much about that I'd rather kind of point out a thing or two about Raw than rehash what we've already talked about. I ranted on it last week. At least, thank God, the tag team champions didn't have to lose in a handicap match this week.
Yeah, that's something.
Instead, I know we love Big Cass. I love Big Cass. There's an Enzo debate for us coming in the future, I'm sure.
Yes.
But that was a squash match. It was basically, after the first couple of minutes, Cass just ran through him.
Yeah.
I don't understand how they think that's helping Gallows or Anderson at all. I understand the idea of, we're going to have a tag match on Sunday, so have a one-on-one match. But that didn't do it. That didn't work. And then also, the women's division, if you're gonna make that tag match, for one thing, Nia didn't need to be in that match. It made total sense for you to just have Dana in that match. You decide to put Nia in that match. Nia can dominate the whole match, but she doesn't need to be involved in the ending. You're telling a story leading up to a pay-per-view special event, whatever we've got, whatever. Leading up to Fastlane, the story is Charlotte, Bayley, and Sasha, because she won't go away in this story. But Nia's story isn't included here. Tell that story otherwise. So to have her crush them both and her standing there at the end, it benefits Nia, sure, but it doesn't help what you're trying to do at all. And it makes no sense to place that in a go-home show before a pay-per-view. doesn't do you any good. Unless Nia's in the title match, you save that for the Raw after Fastlane. Because you didn't have to do it this past Monday. So that made no sense. The beginning, the opening segment, Goldberg seemed quite a bit more on point this week than he has been in a couple other weeks. I liked that you finally at least got him and Owens in the same place.
Yeah.
Because you finally have Goldberg in a feud with a guy that's there every week. I would have liked him to get in the ring. I would have liked them to. They're not going to brawl, but to feign some physicality and then see Kevin powder or whatever he's going to do. Sometimes it doesn't land. That wasn't a bad segment, but it didn't do much. As a go home, it didn't do much for me. It was the same old from Goldberg, presented in a better form, and then it was Owens trying to give teeth to a promo that, when we really boil it down, there's really no issue between these two. He's trying like hell, and his Twitter's hilarious.
Yeah.
Some of the shots he's taken out have been great, but he can't do that on TV, and you can't be that cutthroat on TV. It just, and then at the end, Roman and Strowman was fine.
Yeah,
it was fine.
Strowman looked great.
I'm glad Strowman popped up. I'm glad it again seemed finally like Reigns doesn't have an answer for him. But there was nothing, and the rest of that show was just it was real difficult to, I get it. People screwed up at the Oscars. I don't need you to
we don't.
In the Raw, I get you want to be pop culture. Nobody cared about that. That just came off as clunky and bad.
And one of the biggest issues I had with that entire Raw was just the crowd itself, especially during the Seth Rollins segment.
You're right. I'm going to let you go, but I am going to say this. Right now, I'm not entirely sure that I have this power, but if I do, I'm using it right now, and I have a Facebook friend. If you watch this episode, he'll be really mad at me. Green Bay, you just lost Raw for the entire state of Wisconsin for at least 18 months. That was terrible.
Yes.
Terrible.
You have Seth Rollins, one of Raw's top stars, getting injured and coming back to address his injury, may not even show up to WrestleMania for the second straight year, which is a huge blow. And I don't even know how to put this into words. I'm trying to just hold back what I want to say.
If you can keep it, I don't care. No holding back. I'm fine.
No holding back. Okay, great. So this is going to be the first. All right, you just want to shit all over the situation. That's what Green Bay did during that segment by chanting CM freaking Punk. I don't understand. Okay, you have one of Raw's top guys, one of the top guys in WWE, one of the top guys in the world, arguably. And he comes back from this injury, his second knee injury in the same knee, to address his role at WrestleMania, whether he will be there or not. What was supposed to be a possibly emotional, exciting segment, but you just want to forget about all of that to chant CM freaking Punk. I don't understand. Punk's gone. He's never coming back. He shouldn't come back, and it's because of people like Green Bay. Screw you.
I'm begging. The first thing I do when this show ends is I'm messaging Eron and telling him that he absolutely has to watch this episode because you're going to be his favorite person. No, I completely agree. People now with revisionist history will say, I've already read it in places, that Seth, because obviously that segment, I'm glad we got here because it was the one segment I for no valid reason overlooked from Raw. And it did end up being a very good segment. It's probably the best segment. I neglected it completely. But people were saying that Seth's performance at the beginning of everything, and he didn't quite convey what they were trying to convey. But it's all a load of crap. They were chanting CM Punk on the fifth word he tried to get out of his mouth. It was it's the dark side of what's been building for years and what some people hate on. It's why they hate on the NXT crowds. and some of the very some of the chants that they have that are more than your usual. They really, it's the idea of the crowd going into business for themselves. It's why the first couple of times when the Raw after WrestleMania, when we would chant for the broadcasters and we chant for Randy Savage, that it was kind of cool, and why every time after it, it's awful and you need to stop. And yes, you're right. That Raw had plenty of times that you could have done all that and nobody would have cared.
Right.
But the fact is, you had nobody in the ring that had any ties to Punk, which people still cling to. You know, a couple of weeks ago, the thing after Raw with Rock in the ring, they chanted it because the actress playing AJ Lee was in the ring. Okay, that's a stretch, but I get it.
Yeah.
You know, if some Heyman comes to the ring and there's a lull, he gets it. I understand that. There was no connection there at all. No reason, like you say. No, you're 100% right. I'm glad you said that, because I did, you know, in thinking and planning out the show in the last couple of days, I did plan on informing Green Bay that they've ruined it for the entire state of Wisconsin. And I almost forgot. They almost got off the hook, and you made sure they didn't. So that's a positive.
Yes. And if you thought Green Bay was bad, Raw is in Chicago next week. So looking forward to that.
The one thing I'll give Chicago is in most cases, they at least know when to do it. And in Chicago's case, either they do it when somebody, like I say, somebody's in the ring that has a direct and obvious tie to Punk, or when Raw's having a segment that's just beyond usefulness. It's just not, that's fine. If you want to chant it during, you know, the New Day versus Rusev and Jinder for the third straight week, sure. Fine with that. Right. New Day's got nothing going on right now. That's an easy segment to chant in. Right. But that the JBL chants on SmackDown that we still get, the announcer chants, I love Randy Savage, but the Randy Savage and the older, I don't do it on your way out, walking down the stairs. You're all still together. You can chant it there. I don't need it because you're ill-timed. Seth Rollins, you need to pay attention.
Right. It just chant whatever you want. I don't care. Just don't do it during meaningful segments or matches. That's all I ask.
Right. No, we're in agreement there. And we're in agreement that we're now tied up. Last week, we both were on SmackDown. This week, we're both on Raw. Right. I really can't wait till the week that we disagree on this, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm not forcing it. We'll get there.
Yes.
So we've talked about everything heading up to it. Sunday is Fastlane. The beauty of the brand split is I don't have to hate these shows as I used to, because Fastlane used to be pretty much useless.
Yep.
And now with the brand split and in a smaller roster, it does feel like some of these matches on Sunday are going to matter, and are going, obviously, the main event is going to matter. The site I used to double check the match card, because I wanted to make sure I hadn't missed something that it was, you know, thrown in on Monday, has them in a bit of a jumbled order, but I kind of want to go match by match real quick, and there's some matches on here, unless you feel differently, that, you know, if you've got something to throw in, fine, but there's a few on here that I think are just, you know, state it and forget it. But because like this one, the first one I had, I didn't know this was a match. I didn't know the Cruiserweights had a second match on this card. But apparently, Rich Swann and Akira Tozawa are going to be taking on the Brian Kendrick and Noam Dar.
The face is getting the win.
I was going to put you on camera for you, but yes, I would agree. Swann and Tozawa are getting the win there. I like that they're trying to build the storyline there with Tozawa and Kendrick. But yeah. That's probably the pre-show, and the faces go over. Faces go over on the pre-show, with the exception of Gallows and Anderson, and we've seen what's happened to them since then. So the bad guys probably just shouldn't win on the pre-show.
Yeah.
Looking through here, what's the next match that kind of doesn't matter a ton? Oh, it's probably the other Cruiserweight match. Any chance?
No. No, there's no chance Jack Gallagher's winning that match. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Neville retains. We're both on Neville here. One day we'll talk about how they turn very talented technical wrestling Jack Gallagher into the next Santino Marella. But yeah, that's for another day. Okay, what's next? We'll say tag team title match. Gallows and Anderson versus Enzo and Cass. Is this the time? Is this the moment for Enzo and Cass to win those belts?
Not yet. I think you got to give Gallows and Anderson at least one successful defense.
Yeah.
Please. Like,
I mean, because the last 3 weeks have shown that they're capable of beating anybody, but that's okay.
Right.
I think it's the usual WWE misdirection. They look completely beatable, so they'll cheat to win or what have you.
Right.
Please, you missed the chance with Bayley. You handed Bayley the belt way too soon. Enzo and Cass's win will mean more after they lose a bunch of times. Let's keep in mind, they never even got to hold the NXT tag titles, and they absolutely should have. Right. So delay, slow play that as much as possible. Yeah. Gallows and Anderson win and bring the belts to Mania.
Right.
Then you can do whatever stupid four-way tag match that you're going to do because there's the only tag team that anybody cares about on Raw right now because of what you've done besides Enzo and Cass is hosting the frickin' show.
Yep.
Okay, and then so that's those three. Let me mark them off here so that I have a clue what I'm doing. Total hosting. This one was a little interesting. This one I wrote down one way, and then I crossed it out and wrote down another way. Nia Jax taking on Sasha Banks. What do you got there?
Huh. I'm gonna be real with you. I didn't even know that was a match.
This is why when I did predictions, I had to use the internet to double check the match.
Wow. Okay. Nia won their first one, right?
She crushed her. She crushed her in the pre-show. Absolutely squashed her in the pre-show.
Okay, I think wow, okay, this is a match I don't even know nor remotely care because I'm not a fan of Nia Jax. I'm not that big of a fan of Sasha. But
I'm writing that down. That's a comment. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I'm very open about that, but I'm gonna give it to Sasha just for the fact that I feel like something's coming with her and Bayley. So if you want to set that up, give Sasha the win so she has some momentum. But I mean,
I think we're generally in the same place, but I think Nia beats her. I think Nia still wins. I don't think the only times they've had Nia lose on the main roster is when they absolutely have to. Is those Bayley and her in a number one contender match because they wanted Bayley in that match, and Bayley's got to climb out at risk to beat her. Other than that, Nia squashed people. I think Nia still beats her, and I think that frustration feeds into what we might see. I don't think we see it at Fastlane, but I think we might be barking up the same tree with Sasha Banks and Bayley there. But I think actually Nia takes that one. So that's the first one that we split. I want to write that down because we're going to revisit these after. All right, so going past that, we'll just go to the women's title match. It's a pay-per-view.
Yeah, it feels like Charlotte's winning this. If you want to keep her pay-per-view streak intact, you're not going to have her lose at Fastlane.
That's my biggest reason for picking Charlotte as well.
Right.
It's just that streak has WrestleMania written all over it.
Exactly.
That if they have her lose here, they did it wrong.
Yep.
As much as I hate the idea that she's going to win the belt 2 weeks later, if she loses it here, you did it wrong.
Yeah.
If she loses it here, like I said last week, this match should have been Charlotte and Dana Brooke versus Bayley and Sasha Banks.
Right.
And you should have just waited and done it at WrestleMania. So we're both on Charlotte there. So that leaves us with 1, 2, 3. The 3 matches that matter. And I saw you talking a little bit about this one earlier, so I'm curious where you go. Samoa Joe makes his first main roster pay-per-view taking on Sami Zayn. What do you think's going to happen there?
Well, when I first saw the match and I put it in the group on Facebook, I expected the match of the year candidate, but after Jay brought up the point that there's a possibility of this being a squash match for Joe to show him or to show the fans exactly what he's capable of doing, I think Joe's going to get the win, obviously. I brought it up. for Sammy's sake, I hope it isn't a complete squash. But it should be a strong showing for Joe. So I expect that to happen.
Yeah, I don't think there's any surprise here when Joe wins this match.
Right.
I think, and I saw that conversation obviously earlier, and I think
Right.
I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say for them and for me agreeing with them earlier. The term squash match, this isn't a Braun Strowman match. I think
Right.
the important part to keep in mind here is that again, what is the story we're trying to tell? This match on Sunday is about Samoa Joe, 100%, not Sami Zayn. So will Sami get his moves in? Yes. It's hard. We a lot of times fans just look at the two guys put in the ring and how otherworldly talented they both are, as it is in this case with Joe and Sami Zayn. If stories were completely taken out of it, this match steals the show. This match is the number one match on this card. It's the main event. But the story that they're trying to tell does matter. So while you will get that moment that Sami tries to hit the exploder, probably hits the exploder on Joe, hits the dive to the outside and things, Zayn will not get crushed here.
Right.
But there will be very few points. Zayn will always be swimming against stream. He'll always be trekking uphill. It'll always seem unlikely that he's going to win this match because it should feel that way because you're positioning Joe correctly. If Joe comes in and feels even with Sami Zayn, a guy who's been very up and down on Raw, not in terms of what he's been winning, but where they've positioned him on the card and what they've been doing with him, that's detrimental to Joe. Joe needs to come out of this match feeling like he was pushed. Zayn's a legitimate contender, but the match was never seriously in doubt. If that's the case, you've done the job correctly. And if that's the case, then in 6 or 9 months, if you've done what you should do with Sami Zayn, you can have this match again when they're on more of an equal playing field, and you'll get that match of the year candidate because we know that them just thrown in a ring together, they can tear it down. So that's the biggest thing is you have to take into account the story they're going to tell here. And the story they're going to tell here means that Joe has to come out of this looking, again, just completely unstoppable. Right. So Joe wins that one. We're both on Joe there. Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns. The match they've spent easily the most time building and preparing heading into Sunday. Both guys at times rumored to be facing the same person at WrestleMania.
Yep.
Where do they go here? What are they going to do here?
Right. I think the obvious route they're going to take, or at least it's what everyone is predicting, and that is Strowman gets the win due to Undertaker interfering against Roman. If you want to go that route, if you want to do that, fine. And I'm not sure who brought it up. I don't know if it was you or someone else I was talking to, but if I was going to do it, I would have Strowman defeat Roman clean at Fastlane, and then the next night have Roman demanding a rematch against Braun Strowman, but instead of Braun, you get the Undertaker, thus setting up the match at Mania.
Yeah, I will say, and maybe it's just I haven't run into it. I hadn't even considered or really heard the idea that the Undertaker would be interfering on Sunday. It's an interesting point. However, I think I wouldn't love it if they did that. I think your route is the build for that match is easy. I actually wrote a piece for PWP. Or it must have been at least 2 years ago, if not 3, because it might have even been heading into WrestleMania 30, if not definitely WrestleMania 31, about how they could have built Roman Reigns and Undertaker then. And how I think people overlooked the fact that Roman was even dropping hints towards it in promos, and then they decided. I think it was 2 years ago, because I think that's the year that we ended up going Undertaker and Bray, and instead of Undertaker and Roman. I don't think you need to do that on Sunday. Here's the part where if I'm going to anger people, I might anger people a little bit, because people are going to think I'm wrong. Braun needs this win more than Roman.
Yep.
But if you're asking, and all we ask, the way I phrase this and the way we put them, my prediction, Strowman and Reigns ends in a no contest by one way or another. Double count out, double disqualification, double knockout. Hell, let's go New Japan style. I don't care. I think they get out of that match with neither one of them losing. If I know WWE the way I know it, and then maybe something similar. Roman comes out because he's supposed, he's the face by definition alone, saying, well, I want to settle this and yada yada. I think that'd be at the end of the show, but I'm going to call out Braun Strowman. I'm going to call Braun Strowman, and then that's when you get the Undertaker, and we just sort of move on from it. Right. I don't think either of them lose on Sunday. I spent the most time trying to come up with an answer that wasn't nobody wins. And I'm going on 30 years of WWE watching, and I feel like Vince loves both of these guys, and I don't think he's ready to have either of them with a major loss. It doesn't help Strowman at all to lose right now after, he hasn't lost in forever, and doesn't do Roman any good either. So I think they both find a way to walk out of Fastlane being able to say, while they didn't win, they didn't lose. So I think that ends up as a no contest. And they move on from there. You've got Strowman winning. So at least the IWC will like you more than me, because at least you have Roman Reigns losing a match.
Gotta build up that reputation.
The amount of time I expected to spend on this show defending Roman Reigns, and they've killed it in the last 3 weeks. All right, and then that brings us to the main event. Goldberg challenging Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship. Does Goldberg go into WrestleMania holding the title in what will be the most publicized, the most promoted, the most advertised match of WrestleMania, with the title thrown on top? Does Kevin Owens retain the title against the guy that they've made look ridiculously unbeatable since the moment he walked back in the door? What do you think?
I'm conflicted. I really am. Because you have many possibilities here. Because both guys are in other feuds with other guys. You have Kevin with Jericho, Goldberg with Brock. Goldberg and Brock is already set in stone. That is confirmed for WrestleMania. And it's guaranteed that we will get Kevin versus Chris Jericho. But the question is, will one or both of those guys interfere on Sunday? Will Brock interfere to stop Goldberg from winning the title, which on his end really wouldn't make sense, considering Brock kind of wants to be the champion? And as for Jericho, I mean, it's all up in the air. But if I'm going to give you a prediction on what makes the most logical sense, I'm going to, as much as I hate saying this, I'm going to give it to Goldberg for one key topic, one key reason that I think is going unrecognized due to the fact that they're not using it enough. I think if you're going to do Jericho v. Owens at WrestleMania, and you're not going to do it for the Universal title, do it for the championship that Chris has been holding on to for the past month and hasn't done a single thing with the U.S. title. Again, I don't know if that's the route they're going, but as a more logical sense, I'm just going to give it to Goldberg. But for me, this is a toss-up. I don't know.
Okay. Bear with me as I write down your prediction here. Kevin Owens retains the title of Fastlane. 100%. And I would love to say that Owens is going to go into the ring and he's going to super kick him and he's going to cannonball him and he's going to pop up powerbomb him, and he's going to pin him 1, 2, 3. Fact of the matter is, you're going to have absolute shenanigans galore. We are getting a schmooze of epic proportions on Sunday. I believe this is the first time that you will begin to see the formation of what everybody is kind of expecting, and what Kevin Owens himself he didn't even try to hide the fact with that game comment in his promo 2 weeks ago. It wasn't even thinly veiled. There is no reason not to expect Triple H involvement in this match. I expect Triple H involvement in this match. I expect Samoa Joe involvement in this match, and I expect neither of them to ultimately matter. I actually expect Goldberg to power through both of them, and that's when Brock Lesnar gets involved. I think Brock is the one. Brock is the one that ultimately costs Goldberg, and I think it comes out after that Brock says, "This is about more to me than any title, and you're the one that I have to beat. No titles, no nothing. This is about man versus man." But I think, like I say, I think it's been the way that Owens' reign has gone. But I think for once we come out of it with some positives, because I think that we begin that stable. I think you get Samoa Joe, and everybody freaks out. Oh my God, why is Samoa Joe down here? And then I think you get Triple H, whether he just comes to ringside or what. But I think Goldberg overcomes both of those, and then I think Lesnar comes out. Now, I do not think that Lesnar becomes a part of said stable, but I think you see all three during those match. I think they go out of their way to make it painfully obvious that Goldberg should have, would have, could have won that match easily. I'm just praying that it goes more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But even that, the way you built Goldberg, it's tough to envision him doing that until the match with Lesnar. But no, I'm solidly on I'm solidly with the belief that we are indeed heading towards KO Mania, and that Owens and Jericho will be for the Universal title. And we'll get to predictions for that. I think you take care of the United States title either the night after WrestleMania or in the coming weeks. Nobody's really going to cry horrible foul. Or maybe even heading up to WrestleMania. Do something where they've got to pick their opponents, and Jericho ends up dropping the title. But if the story is, hey, we're doing Owens and Jericho for the world title, and you guys are going to have to deal without a United States title match on WrestleMania, I don't think anybody's going to mind. Anybody's really going to complain about that. But no, I'm there. I'm pushing all the chips to the middle of the table on Kevin Owens retaining the title on Sunday.
Yeah. I'm just putting in one chip. That's it.
He's just calling the big blind, whereas I went all in pre-flop. So for any of my poker players, that'll get a chuckle, or you'll just hate my terrible poker play. So, all right. It's amazing that we just, with everything that's gone on this week, we just spent almost about an hour on WWE. This is easily by far going to be the longest episode. Yeah. So hopefully we're not boring you to tears at this point. But there's just no way there's just no way, unless Caden's falling asleep on me, that I can't touch some of this other stuff that we've got going on this week. Because there's been a lot of stuff happening in the world of wrestling. The biggest, because it's been going on for 2 straight days now, is just the mass exodus from TNA that we've seen. Everybody had heard rumblings and rumors that the Hardys were going to leave, but the list just continues to grow. As of right now, go ahead.
In the span of 4 days, TNA has lost Drew Galloway, the Hardys, Mike Bennett, Maria Kanellis, and today they lost Jade. So in the span of 4 days, TNA has lost 6 of their key players.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going to go, just in case, because it's been happening so quickly and so furiously that there's a chance that some people might end up watching this and may have missed the fact that Jade had left. So what happened? We had so many good feelings when Anthem took over and there was changes in ownership, and now I don't think there's a lot of people calling and saying that they're in trouble per se of going anywhere, but what are what are your reactions to the fact that we've got new ownership, we've got Jeff Jarrett back on board, and all of their major talent is seemingly jumping out as quickly as they possibly can?
There's, as fans, we can't jump to conclusions, but there is something going on that we don't know about. I think something backstage behind the scenes just
not even that we don't necessarily know about. It's been reported, and I'm pretty sure it was by PW Insider, which everybody kind of takes as the top source. I know we reported it at some point as well, that their number one focus and Jeff Jarrett's number one task in coming in was to cut salary, and to, it seems from what I can see, to just blindly cut salary, just to chop off wherever they could chop off. There was even a report, and obviously, where I don't have any source in TNA. I don't know about you, but I don't. So this could be all. This is all speculation, and it's off of PW Insider. But there was even the report that Jeff Jarrett was himself seeing performance bonuses for chopping that salary, which was a lot of the talk about the Hardys initially, was the reason that I'd expect that they are some of the, two of the highest paid performers in that company, and that he was actually seeing performance bonuses for ridding them of that salary. So that's out there. But still, though,
yeah, something is it isn't right, and I believe it was John JCD. He brought up the point of, as much crap as we have given Dixie Carter over the years, she would have not let this happen. I think she would have done everything in her power to make sure that she did not lose. I'm not saying all 6, but at least she wouldn't lose all of them.
Wouldn't lose the Hardys. That's for sure.
Wouldn't lose the Hardys. Absolutely not. But the fact that Anthem has taken over, Dixie Carter is out, Jeff Jarrett is back in, and they've been in control for how long now? Like 2-3 months?
Maybe that.
Maybe a little bit longer, but the fact of the matter is, you haven't even had control of this company for more than 6 months, and already you have lost 6 key players, and 2 of which, Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, who have been keeping TNA, I'm not going to say completely relevant, because you still have other guys. I mean, Matt and Jeff for sure have been keeping this company from sinking completely. But it just doesn't make any sense. You have 6 amazing talents like that who get a reaction, and their names everybody knows: Drew, Jeff, Maria, Mike, Jade, Matt. It baffles me and confuses me that you take over this company, say you want to make this a better place, and you're going to try to put it on top and try to bring it to where it once was. Yet in the span of 4 days, you lose six key players. I don't understand.
Gotta unmute me. There we go, Google. Come on. All right, so I'll say this.
Take it away.
Looking at it from their angle, obviously, and Jeff took to Twitter to say this. He put out a statement saying that normally they do not comment on any comings and goings of talent. That's all. But he felt the need, I think, because everybody, it seemed like rats jumping off a ship almost, to come out and say, there's a plan here. Obviously, we don't know that. There was reported, I know PWP reported that Matt Morgan is teasing that he's going to return to a promotion that's on television. A lot of people immediately jumped to TNA because he had a big run in TNA there previously. I don't know if there's a connection between him and Jeff, but that was everybody's assumption immediately. Plus, because a lot of times when WWE signs guys, you don't get the ability to go and tease it on Twitter. You
Right.
sign your deal, and there you are. You're jeopardizing your deal if you go out there and try to play that game.
Right.
And so, very quickly, trying to look at it from a TNA side. Financially, I could understand if you wanted to let the Hardys
Right.
go. If they are two of the top paid people in that company, as
Right.
they are, just due to the age. There's counterpoints to that, which I'm going to get to real quick. But a guy like Drew Galloway still in his prime. I don't think he's not what Matt Hardy's turned himself into. He's not
Right.
But I will say, not my favorite, but he's done a great.
Yes.
He's put together a great body of work since leaving WWE.
Right.
So he is a draw. He's a name. TNA could absolutely use him. Jade, I'd love to see NXT pick up. I think that's the closest thing that you have to an Asuka competitor right off the bat. And I wanted to throw that because I've got to say, there's only been a few times that I've gone out of my way to make sure I watch TNA live. A lot of that has been from the Hardys. But one time that it wasn't from the Hardys that I made sure that I watched, and part of this is from where I'm from and seeing him on the Independents and seeing him wrestle in front of nobody, the degree to which you just bungled Mike Bennett and Maria. Because they're a great pair. Maria needs to be mentioned in any conversation with Mike Bennett. That package works, and she's amazing at her role. You saw how influential and how creative she could be with some of the stuff she did in New Japan when they were feuding with Gallows and Anderson.
Yes.
Like that, if that's not an untapped talent in his prime and you can't figure out something to do there, and maybe this is a situation where he just maybe wasn't happy with, maybe he'd been told something that was, what their plans were for him, or there's something other than them just cutting him out because of what he was being paid. But if he's just a financial move, that stands out to me as the worst move of all.
Yeah.
And that the biggest one that may come back and haunt them. I will say this, to give them what they, in case anybody's wondering, the names or the big names that they've got locked in that aren't going anywhere because they're already under contract. You've got Bobby Lashley, obviously a huge part of the plans going forward. Maybe the best case of a guy really improving his stock based off his time from WWE. Apollo Crews is looking at him and wishing he could be Bobby Lashley right now. Moose is under contract. They're not going to lose Moose. The Wolves, Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, which is good. Obviously, they've still got a major storyline going on between themselves right now on TNA TV. Eli Drake, who they clearly have big plans for. And for a long time, my favorite performer on TNA and another guy that turned the dial for me. And unfortunately, because I'd love WWE to get him now, EC3 is going nowhere. EC3 will remain on TV. So they're not devoid of talent. And obviously, they can make moves to bring people in. But you mentioned her. Wasn't everything going to improve when Dixie left? I'm not forgetting the things Dixie did wrong.
Right.
But who on their roster right now, because again, they've done great things with Lashley. They were doing great things with EC3. I'm not a huge fan of where they've gone with him since, but he's still a great talent. The Wolves are great talent. On a mainstream, draw in new viewers on that angle, looking at it from that direction, who's must see on their roster right now?
Must see. I mean,
because that was Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy did that for that company. The broken Matt Hardy character and the out of the box ideas, as ridiculous as they seemed at first. The first match from the compound between him and he was Jeff at that time before he was Brother Nero. When we first watched it, me and my fiance, it was as much kind of laughter as it was entertainment. But they really, I mean, to their credit, took it and ran with it. And they were the reason that fans who would only watch WWE or would only watch other promotions, they were the reason that people were paying attention to TNA. And that was your conduit to, hey, we're going, and they were figuring it out. Hey, we've got a segment I specifically remember the episode where Decay was going to the Hardy compound, and that was the last thing you were going to see on the show. So what did they do during the show? We saw Eli Drake. We saw Lashley taking on, I believe it was Eddie Edwards. They were doing what you need to do. Draw them in with that mainstream talent. And while we've got you, here's all of the amazing in-ring talent that we have, in hopes that next week, when there isn't a Hardy segment, you still want to come back and see what Lashley's going to do or such. That was what you had. Having all the in-ring talent is great, but if you don't have somebody to make them change the channel and watch them,
right?
What are you going to do?
And I don't think TNA has that right now. At least for me, I don't. If I were to come across TNA on TV and say it would be say if it was Lashley versus Eddie Edwards, I wouldn't be. It just wouldn't sit right with me, because if I were to turn on TNA and see the Broken Matt character and Brother Nero doing one of their promos and all the chants and all that, and that would reel me in for next week, because I would want to see more of them. But now that they're gone, I don't think TNA has that next talent to draw viewers back in.
And the point is, I don't want, at least from my end, I don't want it to seem like I'm knocking their entire roster there. I'm saying none of those guys are established there right now.
Right.
And sometimes in order to be established there, you have to have you have to have the eyes on you. So that while some people like to complain about they're older, they're using older talent, people bash WWE for it all the time. But if you're using them the right way, and it seemed like TNA was getting there, if WWE was using Goldberg because their viewership was down, watch Raw because Goldberg's going to be on, and then stacking the beginning of the show with the the younger talent. That's the way to do it, and you just hope that somebody or a couple of those segments draw people in to come back the following week. They seemed like they'd figured that out with the Hardys. And that's my question. I'm not in any way saying that they don't still have talent. Almost everybody that I ran down there, even if I'm not the biggest fan of a couple of them, I know they can wrestle. But who's going viral? The Hardys went viral constantly. And in today's day and age, that matters. And that I know specifically for me, I can't speak for everybody. I know specifically for me, when I would know ahead of time that there was a match at the Hardy compound, I would try to set aside the 2 hours. I say, okay, TNA, because I've tried with TNA many times. I've tried to become a weekly watcher, and it's been very hard at times. But I'm the type of person, and I'm sure there are at least some like me that would say, I'm not just going to wait till 9:40. I want to see what you're doing with the Hardys, so you have 2 hours of my time.
Right.
Because I enjoy all wrestling. I'd like you to prove me wrong and make your television show must-see TV. I don't know what they have to draw those types of people in now. I mean, that's my friend. But I will say, unless you've got more to go in, all of this knocking it, there was a glimmer of potential hope for TNA in the past week. An idea that I think would be hugely beneficial to them going forward if they were able to do it and do it correctly. I see you doing it over there. Yes. I'll put you on camera here real quick so people can get the tease of where we're going here. Basically, Cody, I didn't see the episode. I saw Cody's tweet. And again, this is part of, you have to have the ability beyond your TV show to gather eyes. Cody tweeted something to the extent of, your eyes are not deceiving you, or yes, you saw what you really saw. And I've kind of just pieced it together. I did not watch the episode, but it did intrigue me. I knew that they were returning to TNA to thank Moose for assisting them in one way or another. And it basically resulted in Cody dropping Moose.
Right. So I'm just going to add some context as to...
Yeah, be my guest.
Yeah. So basically, Cody is not completely signed to TNA. He has dates here and there as he works with Ring of Honor, New Japan, all that. Brandy, on the other hand, is on a contract with TNA. So she is full-time there while Cody just comes and works dates. But as Cody was out doing his thing in New Japan and all that, Brandy was with Moose, teaming up to take on Decay. Just looking out for her. That's the storyline they were getting at. So on last week on TNA, Cody came back to thank Moose for helping her out, but it became a personal thing when Cody accused Moose of sleeping with Brandy. So it was.
I didn't realize it reached those levels.
Yeah, it reached those levels. Because Moose brought up the fact that Brandy had his number, and then Cody took that the wrong way, and then Brandy was trying to calm him down. He acted calm, but then he just low blowed him, attacked him, and I think the first reference of Bullet Club on TNA.
Yep, that was my question, and I went to the PWP group on Facebook because, again, I'm not a week-to-week TNA viewer, to try to confirm that. Basically, that was Cody's tweet. Cody didn't tweet out him low-blowing Moose. He didn't tweet out him beating up Moose. He tweeted Moose on the ground with Brandy looking up at Cody going, with a "what are you doing" face, and Cody making the Bullet Club signal at Moose. And what I can tell, and I went to social media first. If somebody watches this and wants to correct me and there's been some sort of Bullet Club reference on TNA, feel free to let me know. But I think this is, if it's not the first, if it's not the first, it's the most high profile. Easily. If they can, now very quickly, obviously, they can't get the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks are exclusively signed with Ring of Honor, and they get to do the New Japan stuff. They only get to do what Ring of Honor lets them do. Ring of Honor's not going to let them go to TNA.
Right.
But all you need, you've got the ability to work with Cody. I don't know what the deals are with a couple of other guys, but it seems to me they're the only major independent company, and they're not an independent per se, but there's no reason to me, I don't think, that they can't have a Bullet Club presence on their screen, and that is your mainstream grab. Everybody knows the Bullet Club. They're in every promotion. Yes. They're it's the unspoken group in WWE where they don't call themselves the Bullet Club or perform as the Bullet Club, but people still look at it and say AJ, Finn, Gallus, and Anderson. They've, the Bullet Club has gotten there.
Right.
If you're TNA and this thing is already over and it's already a huge deal and you're losing some of the people that we've been talking about them losing, why wouldn't you go there? As long as, and this is always the fear with TNA, you have to do it correctly. You've got Cody, who is totally capable of leading it within the TNA walls, but he can't have a bunch of bums with him.
Right.
You've got to be willing to commit a little bit here, and I know they can't get the Bucks or things, but you've got to have, through Cody or whatnot, have conversation, because you've got to. The reason the Bullet Club works is they acknowledge each other in different promotions. So you've got to make sure that they pick people that when the Bucks or Adam Cole or Kenny Omega are doing a backstage interview in New Japan, they're going to at least be willing for 10 seconds to throw out that name. Even if they can't come to Japan, if TNA turned whoever, Eli Drake tomorrow, and he's in the Bullet Club, that might have a small impact. Kenny Omega calling, giving him some props or calling him out in a promo in New Japan goes viral. And that's a big deal, and that validates them. So you've got to have the other guys on board, even if you can't get the other guys on your TV show. And that's, I think, where people would probably fear it with TNA. But I think that's absolutely the way you go. You're going to Cody right now and saying, hey, you've got ties with these guys. what can we do to make this work here? You know, how can we present this in a way that we get some sort of a Bullet Club presence on our TV show? There's no reason you shouldn't be able to do it. It's not as if Ring of Honor or New Japan or anybody owns it to the degree where you'd be it'd be a copyright issue like it would be with WWE. WWE wouldn't be able to start using it.
Right.
But I think TNA could get away with it. I think that's a huge opportunity for them if they're willing to go that route.
Yeah, and if they're able to do that, if they're actually able to bring Bullet Club in to TNA, like, do it, because as you said, they're mainstream. Everyone knows who they are. If you could bring a chapter of the Bullet Club to TNA, you're definitely going to draw in not only viewership but intrigue.
Think of it this way: you've got WWE fans that, because of AJ Styles and Gallows Anderson, and even Finn to a small degree, have heard of the Bullet Club, that still don't watch Ring of Honor or New Japan, because you have to put some effort into being able to find them if you're in the US. You've got to subscribe to New Japan World, or, you know, I know for me, some Friday nights Ring of Honor's on certain channels at 11 o'clock or midnight. Some weeks it's not. TNA's got a spot. They're at the same place, at the same time every week. If those fans from WWE hear all of a sudden that the Bullet Club is in TNA, that's a reason to I mean, what else are you watching on Thursdays? There's a reason to go over and watch, or at least to see what's this group that I've heard about and maybe not seen much of.
Right.
If you're not going to re-sign the Hardys and you're not going to have those guys to draw it in, I think it only makes sense. I think Cody's opening that door but it's a matter of, is that just Cody using TNA to get the Bullet Club over?
Right.
Or is there a chance there? I think if you're TNA, I think that you absolutely try to make that happen. I think that's a way to turn all this bad publicity into good publicity, and like you say, to turn the intrigue up versus everybody thinking that right now people are just jumping off ship.
Right.
So, speaking of Bullet Club, we talked about Bullet Club last week. You mentioned that you felt with the addition of Frankie Kazarian, I think you felt maybe that was not quite the splash. I'm trying to be fair, but you felt maybe that was not quite the splash. You compared it to some NWO members and things.
Yeah, I'll just be real about what I said, because I have no shame right now. I after Kazarian joined, I said they were dying. I legitimately sat in this seat looking at this camera, and I said the Bullet Club are dying. However, maybe that's a bit premature.
Well, yeah, and let's set it for, you know, those of us or those that may be watching that either. I know I didn't stay up till 3 a.m. to watch the co-promoted and co-presented between Ring of Honor and New Japan Honor Rising, 2 nights of Honor Rising over in Japan. But I did watch it on New Japan World the following days, each of them, night 1 and night 2. And basically the events that you had quickly run through. Night 1, your main event was Adam Cole and Kenny Omega, the return of Kenny Omega to New Japan Pro Wrestling, the first time that you had seen Kenny Omega on New Japan Pro Wrestling television since he had lost to Kazuchika Okada at Wrestle Kingdom.
Right.
They took on the Briscoes from Ring of Honor. They defeated the Briscoes from Ring of Honor. And after, it was the main event. There is customary after the main event in these big shows in New Japan, the winners of that match will get on the microphone and kind of send the crowd home happy, because New Japan, unlike, for those of you who may not be totally familiar, while they certainly have performers that people cheer and people boo, they don't go out of their way to try to force you one way or the other. They don't go out of the way to clearly define those good guy, bad guy roles that so many American promotions have done for so many years. So even in a group, the Bullet Club, that many people look out as being, you know, potential heels, them winning that match, Kenny Omega is super over. Adam Cole is very popular, and they've got a lot of Ring of Honor fans over there because they've done a lot of cross promotion. They're ready to send the crowd out happy, but they teased quite a bit of dissension between the two.
Yeah.
Kenny Omega going out of his way to say that despite his loss to Okada, this was going to be the year of Kenny Omega. This was going to be he was going to be the number one wrestler in the world and things. And Adam Cole took the mic right out of his hand and told him that while Kenny Omega might have a great year, that the year of Adam Cole would be what everybody was talking about. Omega snatched it back from him, and they left with a lot of sort of tension there.
Yep.
Go to night 2, Adam Cole defends his title against Yoshihashi, defends it successfully. And then later on in the main event, you had a 8-man tag. Omega, Cody, and the Young Bucks defeated Kazuchika Okada, Will Ospreay, and the Briscoes. They celebrated. There wasn't a lot of fireworks in the post-match interview. However, Ring of Honor announcer Kevin Kelly and stand-in announcer Rocky Romero went out of their way as many times as they could to comment about the fact that Adam Cole did not come to the ring to celebrate with his Bullet Club brethren. And then in the backstage interview to close the show, Cody directly commented, I think his words, not a direct quote, pretty close, was, I've been in the Bullet Club for about a week, and people are already asking who's the leader and why is there tension, are there problems? And he went out of his way to say that it was nonsense and to try to squash it, but you didn't get anything from Omega and you never saw Adam Cole. So the two biggest Ring of Honor shows since Wrestle Kingdom, the Bullet Club was in the main event of both, victorious in both, and the main story coming out of both. Where would you sit now? Because I know you did watch them. I gave you the heads up during the week that I'd watched them, was hoping to talk about it. So you went through both. You saw both events. Where would you put the Bullet Club now, and where do you think we're heading with that group going forward?
And I've eaten my words twice tonight. Well, once. This is going to be the second time. Yeah, I'm. This is intriguing because we did talk about some ways that they can make the Bullet Club intriguing by showing dissension, maybe having Kenny Omega break away from the group and go to war against them with Cody or Adam Cole as the leader. And I think that is probably the route they're going down, because Kenny Omega, like you said, he is extremely over, and I think he has all the potential in the world of being a top babyface in Japan. The people love him. I think he has he loves the fans. So right there, you have that connection to make him a strong face. And as for the Bullet Club, if you want to because the past two leaders we've seen with Devitt and Styles, they were attacked, they were betrayed, attacked, and they just left. They just left Japan to WWE. Here we have something different. We could have the Bullet Club turn on Kenny Omega, have Adam Cole or Cody Rhodes become the new leader, and instead of Omega doing the Devitt and Styles thing by going to a new company, have him go to war with his former brothers. I think that is the route they're going to take, and I think that is the best option.
Man, it took 3 weeks, but that's the first time I can recall that allowing you to go first is kind of stealing my thunder.
Yes.
That was a big point for me, was exactly, you finally got a situation where you would expect. I think it makes all the sense in the world to slow play it. I think that's why they brought Omega back. I think I went on record last week of saying that I didn't expect Omega to be back quite so soon. I thought it made all the sense in the world for him to take time off of Wrestle Kingdom, because there's a lot of people saying that's the best match of all time ever anywhere. I think we can calm down a little bit there, but it was an amazing match.
It was a great match.
There was nothing he was going to do shortly after that I felt it was going to come anywhere close. So I had no problem with him taking time off and whatnot. But I think that's the most intriguing part of it is the idea that if and when it happens, which I think it's a guarantee that it will happen, that Omega will eventually be turned on, that he'll still be there. The real interesting part is I dare say, and Bullet Club aficionados can get at me if I'm completely wrong here, but while I wasn't watching as it happened through the Devitt and AJ days, I've gone back and tried to re-educate myself as much as possible on camera and off camera and interviews and things. I'm not sure that the Young Bucks have ever been as tightly knit with a leader of the group as they are with Omega. They go out of their way, like they are legitimately best friends and legitimately tight to so much that they're the elite within the Bullet Club.
Right.
That's an interesting, they obviously can go the same route that they've gone, but we say how over Omega is.
Yeah.
The only American wrestlers that might be more over than Kenny Omega in Japan are the Young Bucks.
Right.
The Young Bucks can't get booed over there no matter how hard they try. They're insanely popular over there. I don't know where they play into things. If there's a rebellion against Kenny, are they 100% on board? There's a lot of interesting possibilities there. And I think that all just plays into what we talked about last week and what my point was the idea that despite what you may have heard, despite what some people may have even written last week for certain PWP websites, the Bullet Club is going nowhere. The Bullet Club, if anything, as we just talked about, maybe expanding, maybe ending up in more promotions than it's already in. They're strong. They're New Japan, for those that are, and I'm getting more and more into it as I can and trying to follow it, they're a promotion largely of stables and large stables with chaos. I will probably never be able to properly pronounce Naito's group, but you all know, and Naito's a beast. I love Naito. He might be my favorite person in that promotion. But they're a promotion largely of stables, and the Bullet Club, even coming out of a night like Wrestle Kingdom where they lost the majority of their matches, if not all of them. They lost some titles, and it was all about, for the most part, it was all about Naito and his group until the Okada match. The Bullet Club is still it's the biggest thing going there. It started possibly as a parody or not a parody, but an homage and a tribute to the NWO. It's so much bigger.
Yeah.
It maybe on our side of the world doesn't feel like the NWO because it didn't have that Hogan moment. It's not in our country. It's the biggest thing going anywhere. And as long as they continue to find people to put in it that have 5 to 6 star matches in the biggest moments, like we talked about last week, until they get that leader wrong, which they haven't in 3 tries, until they get that leader wrong, they're not going anywhere. Because even for every Bad Luck Fale, who's underrated, or every kind of underling in New Japan that maybe you just sort of scoff at, they're so top heavy, and that faction is so stacked that they always deliver. They can deliver, with comedy, like you saw in that 8-man tag. If you remember the 6 boots spot, where they kept running each other into boots, and then all of a sudden Omega gets run into all the feet. Like they can do that. They can do the humor. You get the Young Bucks talking through every match, but at the end of the day, they kill it in every match. Right. And as long as you can do that, and you can keep the stories interesting, and we've talked about on this topic at least like 3 different ways they can go with this, and have an interesting story followed up by 5-star matches, they're fine. I mean, they're not going anywhere. I'd say they're almost, if not as strong as ever, because the awareness of them is, believe it or not, higher than it's ever been. They're in, Ring of Honor. They're going to start getting more involved in Mexico than they even had been with the CMLL connections. Heaven forbid they get onto weekly television with TNA. Like I said, you may end up finding yourself in a month or two writing a pro Bullet Club piece to counter the one that you wrote last week.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah,
Again, I predicted Roman Reigns and The Undertaker 2 years too early, so it happens. So the last topic we've got, I'm interested to see how it goes. There was, I don't want to say what provoked it. I'll talk about it if it either comes up on your list or if it doesn't come up, I'm sure I'll throw it in there. But some of the biggest arguments that I ever got into with my friends, and again, parts of the reason that this show all came about, we're talking about history and talking about the greatest of things. I think that's always subjective and always up for debate, and always pretty interesting to see how people get to different places. I found myself the other day, and I'm sure a lot of people do the same thing, YouTubing old wrestling promos and different wrestling promos and promos that people maybe forgot about that are great, or promos that everybody now swears are the greatest. And I was rewatching one in particular and really kind of picking it apart, and it led me to coming to Caden, I think, over the weekend and saying, I want to do top 5 wrestling promos of all time, based on whatever criteria you choose to pick. So I've got my list. I hope you've got your list. I kind of want to, I'd say we go 5-1, and I almost kind of want to compare as we go, just to, whatever tidbits or explanation you got for them. And I am, like I say, this is a little bit of a loaded question because I'm really interested to see if a particular promo shows up on your list. If not, we'll talk about it because I already teased Caden with it. I think he's already interested. But what would you say? First off, before we get into the lists, for you, just generally, what are the biggest things that you need to get from a promo to really have it stand out to you?
I was thinking about this, and I think when you think of a promo, of course, when I look at a promo, I want to see like a lot of emotion and passion, but I also look at the impact that it has. And some of the ones I have on this list have had a big impact on that person's future. So that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I would agree with passion. I wrote down passion 3 times as the biggest thing. When promos always work the most when you honestly believe the person, it's coming out of the person, they believe it. You need to believe, like I said, I feel like the promos that I remember are the ones that maybe I wasn't totally locked in at the beginning. We live in a world of 2 screens. You've got a laptop or a phone or something in front of your face. The promos that I remember are the ones that tend to make me put that down, and I sort of, it catches you, and then you're locked in for the rest of them. And then impact, but then this interests me on the list because you say impact, and you sounds like you might have looked at it with a what happened after kind of perspective. How did it impact them? For me, and it's quoting one of my favorite DVDs that WWE's put out in a while. One of the best biographies was for Paul Heyman. He talked about a story about how he went out on an old, it was an NWA television show to close a show, heading into a Starrcade or a big event, and he gave a promo, and he talked about everybody on the card, and he threw out every name and everything, and he came back, he's really excited about his promo. He walked into Dusty Rhodes. He said, "Dusty, I did a really great job. I did everything." And Dusty looked at him like, "Yeah, you talked a lot, but where's the money?" The best promos, you have to believe them, but they also, in my opinion, they have to make me want to see something, whether it's see that person get beat up, that person beat somebody up. It's got to talk the person into the building or into buying whatever event you're selling. And that was a big one for me. But so start from the bottom. What do you got? Okay. What's your number 5 with a little bit of, if you've got some explanation?
Okay, so my first one, number 5, kind of contradicts my impact thing. However, it was one of the ones that was still fresh in my mind. And one of the ones that kind of goes under the radar when people think of great promos, but my first one is Shawn Michaels in Montreal in I believe it was 2006 on an episode of Raw, and he just came off his heel turn, and it was just a ballistic, fiery.
Was this just in the hopes of clarity? Was this when he was going into SummerSlam to feud with Hulk Hogan? He was going to fight Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I believe so. And he was in Montreal, and of course, the screw job. You know, the chance came into play. You screwed Brett, and Sean just ran with it. You know, he was the heel. He was going to do whatever he could to make sure the crowd hated him more than they already did, and to make the heat even worse. The moment when Bret Hart's music played, the reaction, and then the realization that he wasn't there, the heat Michaels received. It was just all around one of the best promos of Michaels' career, if not the best. It was just fiery. And as I said, the impact, I'm not sure what the impact really was with that, but it was when Shawn Michaels was in Montreal, and you just come off your heel turn, and you're in the place where people despise you. Yeah, that's guaranteed for a great promo.
Yeah, we're talking about the same one there. I actually watched that in my, then you call it, I guess, research for putting this through. I actually did go back and watch that one. So for anybody that's not familiar with it, yes, it was leading into SummerSlam. He was going to be taking on Hulk Hogan. It was one of his first times going back to Montreal. I know from reading Sean's book and watching some of his stuff, there was a lot of pressure backstage for him to become the old HBK, the original DX HBK,
right.
the HBK that really pressed the limits within those interviews and things like that. Those promos ended up with a lot of heat between him and Hogan, because Hogan maybe wasn't as okay with it as he originally said he would be. But yeah, anybody that's not familiar with it definitely needs to go find it. And I will say, you mentioned him running down Brett and then playing the trick on Montreal where Brett's music hits and everybody pops, and then Michaels just laughs at him because there's no Bret Hart. Bret Hart's not coming.
No.
I got the unfortunate enjoyment of living through a very similar situation. I went live to the 900th episode of Monday Night Raw. I happened to be here in Boston, and CM Punk played a very similar trick, but with Stone Cold Steve Austin's music. And I'd watched so many years of wrestling, and they still freaking got me, and it made me so mad, and it still makes me so mad to go back and watch, because there's one guy that I did see in his prime, but that I want to see one more time before, just to get that pop. It's Austin. I got the pop. I didn't get any rattlesnake walking out after it. So. Yeah. So no, that's a good one. Did not make my list, but it's definitely worth going back and watching. My number 5, you're probably too young to know, and because it's not one that gets. It's a guy that gets a lot of props for his ability to promo, but I don't feel like it's one that gets a lot of like network play or old play. Jake the Snake Roberts gave a lot of amazing promos. There's a number of which that can come to my mind, but the first one that comes to my mind, it also kind of goes up against mine because it was already at the event. It was a promo before he walked out at WrestleMania 6 to take on Ted DiBiase. He gave a promo. If you're familiar, I'm sure you are, because I know you're younger than me, but you know older day WWF as well. Familiar with $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase's character.
Right. Yeah.
Everything was money. Money was everything, and he treated everybody like dirt.
Yeah.
There's no way that I can do it justice for anybody that hasn't seen it. But basically, the story going into the match was that Jake had the $1 Million belt. He had taken it from Ted DiBiase, and they were having the match, and Ted wanted to obviously get the belt back, and Jake, just the vocabulary and the way he goes through to explain how the tables had turned on DiBiase, and that now, after making so many people, humiliating so many people, making so many people grovel for the money, I don't even want to quote him because it doesn't do it, but the idea that now DiBiase was going to have to beg, plead, and grovel for his own money. It's just, I mean, you can even tell at the end of the interview that he's blown away Mean Gene Okerlund, a guy who stood there 50,000 times with the greatest talkers ever, and even Mean Gene's blown away at the end of it. It's on YouTube. It's obviously on the network. It's WrestleMania 6, right before the match. It's just, I think it's the best example of one of the greatest talkers to ever be involved in professional wrestling, sports entertainment, anything. It's just unfortunate his career didn't go longer so that some of this generation would really realize it. But that's my number 5. And like I say, probably of the 5 on my list, one of probably the most hidden gem out of the 5, but definitely one that I'd say it's worth watching.
Yeah, that you're right. I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say I know that promo by heart. But yeah, I knew Jake the Snake was a great talker. He put some great promos, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch that one. But moving right along, my number 4 is one that I had a lot of struggle trying to decide 5, but this one defined who gave the promo, and that was Dusty Rhodes' Hard Times. And just gonna, you seem blown away.
I'm sorry, you got it at 4?
Yeah, I did. I put it at 4. And okay. This list was very difficult.
I can't wait to hear the rest of your list.
Right. Yeah. So my number 3 is probably going to get you, and you're going to yell at me for what I put there. However, I mean, Hard Times. It defined Dusty Rhodes. It defined who he was, and it was a phenomenal promo. You know, he showed that he cared for the people, cared for the fans. I'm just gonna let you take this away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna get into it too much because it's on the list. It's coming. I've got plenty to, but it didn't even define him as a character because Dusty had so many amazing promos. But it absolutely is. I mean, I would say, and I think a lot of guys would probably agree, if you're walking into the Performance Center today or tomorrow and going into promo class and having sat and watched that promo about 50 times, you're probably not ready for what you're walking into. Like that, it's just the epitome of he sold what he needed to sell while making everybody who they said it about Dusty after I played with it. You forgot that there was a plate of glass in between you and Dusty Rhodes on your television set. You felt like he was sitting in your living room. I'm blown away the other 4. I'm not going to tell you where it is on the list, but it's coming up on the list, and I'll talk about it more then. My 4, some people may say it's a little bit of a cheat because I believe when they ran it, again, this might be a little old for you, but I hope you at least know the storyline. I think they ran it in multiple shows, but it was really one promo that they ran up. It was heading into WrestleMania 5, so even older than the last one. But the biggest storyline, if you're not familiar with WrestleMania 5, had been that Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan had been a tag team. You're familiar with the Mega Powers,
right?
And then they explode over perceived, or now going back and looking, maybe more than perceived. I still say the Savage is in the right here. Attraction from Hulk Hogan towards Elizabeth. I called it the lust in your eyes promo because that's the biggest part you remember when Savage looks. Savage has a million promos you can go back that are entertaining and that are funny, and some things like the cream of the crop with the little bits of cream that seem like nobody else should ever be able to pull them off. And it's hard to say that Savage was ever not intense, but this was a case where Savage was the villain, Savage was the heel, and I've heard a lot of people go back and say it's not hard to sit there and look at Savage and feel that Savage 150% believes he's in the right there. You know, absolutely easy to believe everything he's saying. And it takes somebody who's already an amazing talker, an amazing promo, and you give them that ability to where they don't have to fake anything. They just have to turn it on and go. It seemed like an easy message to sell, and the way he delivers it, and the build, because leading up to that match, there really was no physicality between Savage and Hogan. It was all done based on what you'd seen from them as a team, and then Savage going back through that year and picking out moments and picking out things during their partnership that he then perceived as signs of betrayal from Hulk Hogan. And to be able to take a guy at the time that was infallible in Hulk Hogan, it had people looking at it, and he had some people convinced. He was not, you go back and watch WrestleMania 5, you've got people in that crowd cheering for Randy Savage. And it's because he believed it so strongly that he convinced other people, he convinced members of the audience that he was right, and that the immortal Hulk Hogan really did have an ulterior motive and an agenda to get towards Miss Elizabeth. And I think it's the best of Randy Savage's promos, which is saying something.
Wow. Okay. Do I have to finish this list, man? This is Of
course you do.
Because
stand behind your list. Just because I think it's insane that you made Dusty number 4 doesn't mean that your list is wrong.
Well, this one's gonna get you then, but it was gonna make my list regardless, because it's one of the. It's when you think great promos, and especially for me when I think Impact, this is the one that a lot of people put on their list, and maybe it should have been behind Hard Times.
I'm begging. I think I know where you're going, and I'm begging that I'm right.
I trashed him earlier in the show, and it was CM Punk's pipe bomb. Like CM Punk or not, his pipe bomb is infamous. It's iconic. It was the first promo in a very long time where we sat there listening, and we really did not know whether this was real or fake. And the next thing you know, his mic gets cut off. He first of all, he was just telling how he felt in the most controversial of ways, which is how we know CM Punk today. His mic gets cut off. He gets released, comes back, wins the championship, becomes the Summer of Punk. We know that. When you think Impact, his pipe bomb had a strong impact, and I stand behind that.
There it is. That is literally the promo that is the reason I wanted to do this. And I felt strongly enough that I didn't have to. That was the one I hoped was on your list. That is not on my list. I will say this before I go into my little rant that I wanted to go in on promo. I really enjoyed Punk's promo. And Punk's promo did one thing that I pointed out that you have to do with a great promo. Because this may even say to some people that it should be on my list. I remember the day he gave the promo. I remember what I was doing. I remember not caring when he started speaking and caring by the time that he finished speaking. So he got my attention through it. It's a great promo. But what I found myself, and the reason that it's one of the biggest reasons we're doing the topic. I was reading, I want to say it was on Rolling Stone. I was reading a piece about great promos and why you don't get as many of them nowadays, and they referenced it and they YouTube linked it, which intrigued me enough to go back and just rewatch it. A lot of that, here's my problems with it. We look back at that promo now and we say, oh, he just went out there and said, screw it, I don't care about my character or my storyline, I'm just gonna go out and I'm gonna shoot and I'm gonna tell everybody how I feel. And then I went back and I watched it again. Until he says the line where he says that WWE may be better the day that Vince McMahon dies, all of the reactions that he gets from that crowd, all of the oh my god moments that he gets, are when he name drops people. He name drops Hogan. He name drops The Rock, calls him Dwayne. He name drops Paul Heyman. Then he name drops Brock Lesnar. And those are all the pops he gets. He doesn't get that gasp like, oh my God, until almost at the end when he makes the comment about Vince and whether the company would improve when he dies. And then for somebody who went out and his intention was, screw all of this, I don't care what I'm doing, I don't care what my character is, I'm just out there to say what I want to say, he still tries to heel in the crowd. When the crowd does begin to respond, he turns the promo. And part of this is maybe you want to give him credit for this, but I feel like that goes against the idea that he was just speaking from the heart. No, he was trying to give a wrestling promo, because when people began to cheer him, he healed on the fans, said, well, you guys are the biggest reason that I'm leaving, because you don't buy, or you buy all this merchandise that I'm not on. You buy all these things that I'm not involved in. If you cared about me, you wouldn't buy this stuff because I'm not on it. If you're just speaking organically and you're just speaking from the heart, do you have that part in the back of your head that says, oh, I've got to sell that I'm the bad guy here? Especially for somebody who, through every interview that he's had, and sounds like in real life, he always thought he was coming from a position of correctness. He wasn't the bad guy. He wasn't making up these things for him to rebel against. They were there, and he was being held back and things. I think it was a great moment. I think when people realized what was happening, it was a great moment. In terms of now going back and watching them, I get more enjoyment out of his segment and promo of the contract signing with Vince McMahon sitting in the ring, and him and Vince going back at each other in a way that I think is basically organic and legitimate, than I do out of that promo in Vegas. I don't say it to say that the promo is bad. I don't think I think it was like you say, you're right in the sense that it was the biggest thing to happen to CM Punk in his WWE career to that point, and maybe at all, because maybe the other things don't happen if not for that promo. But again, and the other thing that's got to be said is that promo, fine, but everything after it, him leaving with the title and all of that, that was only organic and new and fresh if you were a WWE fan that didn't watch Ring of Honor. I own the Ring of Honor DVD where he does that in Ring of Honor.
Right.
Wins the title, heals on the fans, and then is always going to leave. I think he did it better there than WWE. That's not on him. That's just on the execution. But
right.
That was the one. That was the promo that while I'm not tearing it down completely. I rewatched it and I just said, they had a good crowd. It's not like Green Bay from Raw here. It just, a lot of the stuff he says, he only really gets that reaction from one thing. And they cheer at the end when they cut his mic off. So it's not as if he'd even turned the crowd to his way of things. They cheered when he stopped speaking. So how much impact did that really have? I think the way they were willing to run with it after the fact had more of an impact than the actual promo of it. What do you think there? Before I go to 3,
I stand behind my statement.
You should.
That's it.
You should. My next 3 are all you should know them automatically. My number 3 is King of the Ring 1996. Stone Cold Steve Austin when he wins the King of the Ring. It's the first Austin 316 promo. Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass. Tearing down Jake Roberts after he defeated him in the finals, the King of the Ring. It launched his entire character. He'd had a smattering of support because of his no-nonsense approach, but he popped that crowd with that line, and the next night on Raw, you saw 100 Austin 316 signs, and they were off to the races, creating the greatest character that WWE's ever had. So that's my 3. It looks like I'm getting the same kind of reaction that I gave you for Hard Times. So
that's your number 3. Wow. Okay. All right. I'm curious to see what your next 2 are then. But yeah, 316. It's coming in on my list, but I'll get to that when. we get to it. But my number 2 is when you think it was a great moment, but when you also look at the promo itself, it was really insane, and that was Hulk Hogan, NWO. When the NWO was formed, you're shaking your head, but just let's go with this. Okay, Hulk Hogan was the biggest star in WWF early 70s, 80s, and then goes to WCW, and the biggest babyface in the history of professional wrestling at that time turns heel, joins this group, gives that promo, and then, like I said, the impact is what persuaded me to put this on the list. The impact it had for the NWO and for them in WCW. Granted, yes, WCW died, but I mean, impact-wise, it made WCW must see. And Hogan as a heel with those two guys is what makes me want to put that on the list. That promo in the moment itself, to me, is one of the very best.
Yeah, this is my question to you.
Go.
Did that promo make WCW what it was? Or did the moment that he dropped the leg on Randy Savage make what it was? Because my argument is, I don't care what he said after he drops that leg. Him turning was the moment. His promo was nothing special. The moment was what mattered. I don't remember the majority of it. The biggest thing, and I joked about it, the biggest thing I remember about what he said afterwards, the two biggest things are is A, that he was clearly ridiculously uncomfortable because he wasn't settled in yet to being a heel, but was that he called him the New World Organization because he screwed up the name. That's nitpicking, but what do you remember? Do you remember the promo, or do you remember him dropping the leg on Randy Savage and joining the NWO?
Okay, let me just go with this right here. Like I said, the moment itself iconic, and now we get to the promo with Mean Gene, and okay, you're right. Maybe the promo wasn't one of it wasn't. How do I put it? Help me out here. What's the word I'm looking for?
It wasn't good.
Okay, yeah. It wasn't good. However, like I said, the impact this had. All right, you can shake your head. The promo is number 2 on my list. I should have put it back. I should have put Hard Times in number 2 now that I look at it. However, I'm going with this. The moment the promo defined what was in store, and that's what I look at.
Yeah, I'd say the moment did. I'd say I think he could have said anything, and the moment was going to dictate that. But it's okay, and it's your list. It's not my list. I tried to avoid getting into any kind of debate with it on the group page earlier, but that was my base. Right. I go back and watch it, and I tend to find myself cringing more through this promo than. And my number 2, the person in my number 2, because I think I know where you're going number 1, based on you told me that my 3 is ending up on your list. The person for my number 2 is going to feel hugely disrespected by you, by the fact that he doesn't show up on your list at all. But I'm going.
It's gonna be Flair, isn't it?
No, actually, it's not.
Really?
Because I'm going to ECW. The greatest promo by this man ever was the Kane Dewey promo by Mick Foley, Cactus Jack at the time. I hope you're familiar with it. I'm guessing by the shaking of your head that you are.
Damn it.
Foley had quite a few that I could have picked from, but the Kane Dewey, again, it goes back to what I said about Savage and believability. There's no way that you could doubt everything Foley says in that promo, because there's nobody questioning how you'd feel if you saw a sign saying to Kane, your 3-year-old son. That's easy. You don't have to sell the idea that a heel believes that. Any human being is going to believe that. You add that to Foley's ability to deliver a promo, vocabulary and emphasis, body posture, and just everything. That was magic coming through the screen. Like I said, there's a few I could have picked from him. I've got an honorable mention that has another ECW promo in there, but I think Kane Dewey was just, I think it was probably his most real. I think quite a few of his promos from that era, the kind of anti-hardcore era where he was feuding with Dreamer, all could have been there, but Kane Dewey was the one that I went with. I think I know where we're going with one. If I'm not mistaken, you're going with the Austin 316 promo.
Right.
And I'm going with Hard Times.
Right. I don't really think there's any. I mean, we both explained why you put him on our list. The Austin 316 is number one for me, due to the fact that this promo kickstarted the rise of Stone Cold and was the official start of one of the greatest of all time, and really launched himself to that next level and made him a total star in the face of the company. So that's why it's number one on my list. It was just iconic. Everyone knows it, and it had a lot of impact.
Yeah, and now that we've gone through your whole list, I can see where you end up there, because you were it seems like really weighing in the future impact of it as well, whereas
Right.
I was looking at it from an angle of really trying to capture just the moment that the promo was in. I just think and I didn't live through it. I wasn't watching during Dusty's time, but I think it's so hard to go back to the point like just how over Dusty was and how popular Dusty was. And I think the Hard Times promo is the most quintessential example of why. It was just his ability, like I say, to seem like he was sitting in your living room, and everybody has the ability to look at that. You know, he's going up against a guy in Ric Flair that almost everybody wants to be and nobody can relate to. And he gives the Hard Times promo where everybody, no matter where you're on in the scale, can relate to him at some point in it. And it actively makes you want to see that guy succeed. 100%. It sold any event. It sold the event coming up. It would have sold any Dusty match. I really think it's the number one go-to. I like a lot of times in the Performance Center makes it easy to kind of joke. I talk about a lot with like tag team wrestling and things, of things that I would say the first day you walk in, I'm sitting you down and making you watch this. When it comes to promos, that's the first one that you're sitting down and watching, in my estimation. It's just, it is everything. It doesn't miss. It hits in every block of what you would want from a promo.
Right.
You believe everything he says. He's got passion in everything he says. It sells everything he wants to sell. It gets you in the building. It gets you paying money to see him fight because you want to see him win. It just does everything. Honorable mentions, real quick. I don't know if you wrote down it. It was literally just the ones that I couldn't fit on my list.
Yeah.
And it's hard even to find. Steve Austin gave one in ECW that was very good, basically, where he runs down all the people that held him back from WCW and talks about it. You always see the clip on the network where he says, "I'm going to be the superstar that I always knew I could be, because there's nobody in ECW that can stop me." Going back, that's about a 6.5 minute interview, but it's Steve being Steve. There's no character there. He's running down all of the ideas he gave in WCW for his character and all of the lame excuses he was given as to why he couldn't run with any of them. I tried like hell to get Heyman on this list.
Yeah.
And the best Heyman, but even though I think Heyman's doing pretty much the best work of his career now, the promo I kept coming back to that actually made it on the honorable mention was right before, must have been some Survivor Series 2001. It was right before the Survivor Series where the Alliance ended. Yep, and you're nodding, where he just tears Vince McMahon apart for about 9 straight minutes.
Yeah.
Same thing. It feels like, as much as he can be standing in the ring with the guy that's signing his checks, a lot of that seems real. Maybe taken up a notch, but maybe not. Because at that point, Heyman and Vince's relationship was admittedly, by both of them, not the greatest. And the other one that people give me crap for, but they shouldn't, because everybody that will give me crap for it has been singing his praises for the last 6 months since the freaking brand split. But the promo given by The Miz after he won the WWE title, where he basically stood in the ring and told every single fan in the arena and every single fan at home to stick it, because he proved them wrong on every single. Honestly, that as somebody that's watched wrestling my entire life but has no athletic ability and was never going to be able to take the pain tolerance, but I could have seen myself giving the same promo, and that's as relatable as it gets to me. So I just, was it top 5 all time? No, it wasn't coming to my list, but I it's one that I remember that I wanted to call out, as people. Miz is on a lot of people's mind because of the Talking Smack promo. And the first thing I said with the Talking Smack promo, I even tweeted at the time, was for everybody that didn't think The Miz could do this, go back and watch that promo after he won the title, because it's the same Miz. He's doing it's the same fire, and that's why the Talking Smack promo was so good. Both of them were just 100% real. That was the same guy as we saw on The Real World pretending to be The Rock. It was 100% Mike Mizanin standing in a ring and telling everybody that he'd proved them wrong. Right. So that one, and all of them, they all share the same idea. The passion is the biggest part for me as far as promo goes. Did you have any that just fell off the list, or that have come to you in the meantime, that you want to throw in before people eviscerate your terrible number 2 on your list?
Eviscerate it. I don't care. Come at me.
Sorry, couldn't help it.
But I was trying to stay away, and I saw that you were trying to as well, with retirement type promos, but it, like with Edge and Daniel Bryan. But if there's one quote unquote retirement promo that could have been on that list, it was probably Mark Henry with his fake retirement promo. I think it just sold everybody. He sold it perfectly. It was emotional. It had me believing he was actually retiring. So if I have any honorable mention, it's going to be that one.
Yeah, and which is fair. Like I say, I don't consider those usually time promos. That one was a promo. I would consider that a promo because he didn't retire. And probably the most props I can give that is my fiance hates Mark Henry with the passion of 1,000 Suns, and I think even she gave him credit for that one. So,
good.
So yeah, that was great. Again, and I think the moment at the end where he slammed Cena was as big as the actual promo. Like, I don't remember anything he said. I remember him taking out Cena at the end. So, but no. There's a million more that I'd love to hear from people. That's why I tried to start the conversation early and such. But I liked this. This may have been better not at the end of an episode that ended up running 2 hours. But so I apologize to anybody that we might have lost in the last hour there and such. Normally they'll be a bit shorter than this, but other than the last segment that was completely my own desire to hopefully bash that Punk promo and bring people back to earth a little bit. There was just a lot that happened this week. So I think we'll learn from this going forward, maybe keep it a little more condensed. I understand 2 hours is a lot of time to sit in front of one video for people nowadays.
But think about it this way. This show was only 2 hours. Raw is 3 hours. So we still did less than Raw. We did. We kept it under Raw, and we didn't obliterate 2 entire divisions in the time that we were here. So we're coming out ahead there. I thank anybody that's watching now or that watches it in the next coming week. Like I say, both of us on Twitter, Caden tends to or has been for quite some time now doing all the live tweeting from PWP for every week for NXT. I don't know if you've been helping out on any other shows, but I know he's been owning the NXT tweeting. I've been trying to, I've been a bit quiet on there
but tend to try to get involved and catch any shows that people aren't involved in, just so we keep a presence on there. There's a lot of other contributors that participate there as well. Caden just wrote a piece on the Usos on pwpnation.com. It's worth the read for sure. We touched on them briefly last week, but Caden gets far more into what he thinks of their new characters on PWP.
Yeah,
I write when I can. I've been working on a Chris Hero piece, Cassius Ohno piece for 4 days. It may see the light of day. It may not. Otherwise, you guys are stuck sitting through this to hear me. But I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. Basically, the biggest thing is go to pwpnation.com. Yeah. Check out everybody that's on there. Buy a shirt. And if we didn't exhaust you with 2 hours here, go check out the first couple episodes on the YouTube channel, the Hot Tag channel, where I think 27 videos away from being able to give you a channel that I can read that isn't gibberish. So we're getting there. And I'll mention it here first. There's going to be tons of promotion. Me and Caden have already talked about it. Prior to this, we're on every Wednesday live as close as possible to 9 p.m. Eastern time every week on PWP and YouTube. But I'm already planning for, Caden's already, loosely verbally committed, as barring any kind of unforeseen circumstances. We're going to have a special show the night of WrestleMania, immediately following WrestleMania. I expect we're going to have enough that night that there's going to be a lot to immediately react to. And I just think if we wait till Wednesday, we might go 4 hours, and nobody wants that. So my April 5th, I want to say, is WrestleMania, if I remember correctly.
I think it's
either way.
Is it the 2nd?
Oh, it's the 2nd. You're right. April 2nd.
Yeah.
April 2nd. Whenever WrestleMania goes off the air, we're going to be on the air and react to every single match and everything that goes down at WrestleMania.
Celebration.
So you're going to hear a ton about that on social media and on every episode going forward, because I'd really like to see, I know you're all awake and everybody's amped after Mania, so I'd hope to get some live viewing and some interaction. Maybe we can even get some interaction from you guys on social media. So that's coming down the pipeline. Otherwise, every Wednesday, go to pwpnation.com, watch us there, catch up if you have to on YouTube, but give PWP the love. Anything Caden's got for everybody before we sign off? A big cough. I have a terrible cough. I'm amazed that I've made it through 2 hours and not coughed in your face 100 times. So
yeah, that's wild. But go check out pwpnation.com. Got some great news, great articles, great podcast. Just gonna plug that one in there real quick.
Yep.
And then that's about it. Follow us on Twitter. Go to Facebook. Join our group. Get in the conversation. That's about it. That's all I got.
Yeah, and definitely I'm going to give PWP the credit here, too, with the news, where we've got multiple people catching the news. I've been seeing it. If you're not subscribed to PW Insider, there aren't too many sites that are getting you information quicker than PWP Nation. I have other news sites that I had used from my time before I knew PWP was involved and before I contributed to them. And I laugh now at the amount of time between when we get news up and sometimes it's the next day before some of these sites are getting those same stories up, and they're just copying what we're seeing there. So if you really want to get things as quickly as possible, pwpnation.com and the social accounts, there's so many people that care and that are going through it as quickly as possible. You're going to get it quickly there than you are anywhere else.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're more than done for tonight. Caden, it has been fun. We will see everybody next week. Thanks for hanging out, and looking forward to a great night on Sunday and another great week of wrestling. Have a good night, guys.
You just said what?